Virgin Maid risked her life for the billionaire's son. He held her hand and whispered, "Marry me." The iron gates of the Hayes estate creaked open like the doors of a forbidden castle. Kia Evans tightened her grip on the handles of her second-hand suitcase as the black sedan pulled through the manicured driveway. The mansion ahead rose like a monument, white columns, glossy black shutters, and a marble fountain that sparkled in the Georgia sun. She took a shaky breath. "Don't get fired on the first day, Kia. Nana's counting on you." The driver, an older man in uniform, gave her a silent nod. She climbed out, nerves pinching her belly. The estate smelled like jasmine and money, more money than she'd ever seen in her entire life. Inside, the air was cool, filtered, untouched by the Atlanta heat. "Shoes off, please." The voice came from a woman standing at the bottom of a grand staircase. Mid-50s, stern bun, burgundy lipstick, and posture so straight it looked painful. Mrs. Whitmore, head of household staff. Kia slipped off her thrift store flats and nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am." Whitmore eyed her up and down. "You're younger than expected." "I'm 21, Kia said. "Still young, but Mr. Hayes approved you personally. Strange, given that he never interviews the maids." She turned sharply. "Follow me." Kia trailed her through the gleaming halls, white marble floors, gold inlaid mirrors, walls lined with oil paintings and glass sconces. Even the air felt expensive. "You'll be assigned to the second floor," Mrs. Whitmore explained. "Bedrooms, bathrooms, toy room." "Toy room?" "For the child," she said, without turning. "Zion Hayes, 8 years old, son of Mr. Donovan Hayes." Kia's heart softened at the name. She hadn't known the billionaire had a child. "He has a live-in tutor and nurse. You're not to interfere unless instructed." Whitmore stopped at a large white door. "This is your room. Keep it clean. You'll wear uniforms. Meals are served at set times. No personal calls or visitors allowed. And one more thing." Kia met her eyes. "You are never to go to the 3rd floor. That's Mr. Hayes's private quarters. He doesn't like to be seen or spoken to." Kia swallowed. Understood. Her room was small but clean. Cream walls, a twin bed, and a modest dresser. After unpacking her uniforms and folding Nana's old Bible into the drawer, she ventured out to start her first task, dusting the hallway banisters. That's when she heard it. Crying, software choked, coming from behind the heavy door down the hall. She froze. Mrs. Whitmore's voice echoed in her head. "Do not interfere." But the crying didn't stop. "Kia?" "Just check." She knocked softly. "Hello?" No answer. She turned the handle. Inside was a brightly colored playroom, the walls painted with clouds and stars. Toys scattered everywhere. On the floor sat a little boy, curls wild, brown skin flushed, tears soaking his cheeks. Kia stepped closer. "Hey, sweetie, you okay?" He blinked up at her, eyes glassy with fear. Then, without a word, he launched into her arms. She gasped, stunned, but hugged him back, rubbing his back gently. "Shh, you're safe. I got you." His little hands clung to her blouse. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. The tutor, tall, red-faced, burst in. "Zion, you know better than to leave the—" He froze. The boy whimpered and buried his face in her shoulder. "Who told you to come in here?" the tutor snapped. Kia straightened, holding Zion protectively. "I heard crying. I couldn't ignore it." Before he could reply, another presence entered. Cold, commanding. Donovan Hayes, 6'4", impeccably dressed, dark-tailored suit, sharp jawline. A man who carried authority like a crown and walked as if he owned the earth. His eyes were like winter, grey, unreadable. Zion turned to him and said, "Daddy, she helped me." For a moment, the great Donovan Hayes said nothing. His gaze moved from his son to the young maid holding him. a flicker of something unreadable behind those eyes. Kia gently released the boy. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to break rules. He just needed someone." Donovan studied her. "What's your name?" "Kia Evans." Another long silence. Then, to the tutor, he said, "Leave." The man hesitated. "Sir." "I said leave." Donovan walked toward Kia, slow and deliberate, and crouched before his son. "Zion, go with Mrs. Whitmore. I need a moment." Once the boy was gone, he stood, tall, intimidating. "I don't like my staff disobeying orders," he said quietly. "I don't like children crying alone in locked rooms," she replied. A beat of silence. Then he smiled, just slightly. "You've got guts." Kia straightened her spine. "I have a sick grandmother. I need this job. But I'm not going to pretend I didn't hear that little boy crying like he was breaking." His smile vanished. He stepped closer. "You're bold. That's dangerous in this house." "Maybe," she said. "But it's honest." Donovan stared at her, and for a moment the air changed. He nodded once. "You'll stay." And just like that, he turned and walked out. Kia stood in the silence, heart racing. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would change her life forever. The next morning, Kia woke early. Dawn bled gold through the lace curtains of her room, but her chest still felt tight. The way Zion had clung to her, the look in his eyes, it haunted her. Something about that boy wasn't right. She dressed quickly in her crisp maid uniform, navy dress, white apron, simple flats, and tied her braids into a neat bun. Today she was scheduled to clean the second-floor guest suites, but her thoughts were fixed on one door, the playroom. As she moved quietly down the polished hallway, she passed it, paused. Then, click, the door creaked open. Zion was there, curled up in a corner behind a beanbag, knees to his chest. He wasn't crying this time, just sitting, staring. "Zion?" Kia whispered. He didn't look up. "You came back." Her heart broke a little at the flatness in his voice. She crossed the room and crouched beside him. "Of course I came back. Why wouldn't I?" His small shoulders shrugged. "People leave." Kia sat on the floor beside him. "Not me. Not unless you want me to." That finally made him look at her. "Do you like stories?" She smiled. "I love stories." Zion reached under a pile of toys and pulled out a crumpled children's book. He handed it to her. She opened it and began to read, softly, voice gentle and warm. Zion scooted closer until his head rested lightly on her shoulder. Halfway through the story, she noticed a dark bruise on his upper arm. Her voice caught. "Zion, where did you get this?" He stiffened. "Nowhere." "Did you fall?" "I said it's nothing." He pulled his arm away, his whole body tensed. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm not mad. I just want to make sure you're okay." He looked at her with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You'll get in trouble if you ask questions. That's what Mr. Greaves says." "Your tutor?" Zion nodded, barely audible. "He says if I mess up, it's my fault." Kia's stomach turned. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Zion jumped and ran behind the beanbag again. The door opened. Mr. Greaves, mid-40s, tall, pale, wire glasses, the kind of man who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. He froze when he saw Kia. "I told you to stay out of this room." Kia stood calmly. "Zion asked me to read with him." Greaves narrowed his eyes. "Zion needs structure, not distractions." Kia stepped between him and the boy. "Zion needs someone to actually care about him." Greaves clenched his jaw. "You'll regret interfering." "Is that a threat?" Just then, Donovan's voice rang out from the hallway. "Is there a problem?" Kia and Greaves both turned. Donovan stood in the doorway, arms crossed, unreadable expression on his face. "No, sir," Greaves said quickly, Donovan looked to Kia. Miss Evans? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. No, sir. Donovan's eyes flicked between her and Greaves. Then, quietly, Zion, come here. Zion peeked around the beanbag, hesitant. Kia reached out her hand. He took it and walked past Greaves to stand beside his father. Donovan placed a hand protectively on the boy's shoulder. Greaves, you're dismissed for the day. But, dismissed. Greaves stiffened, then turned and stormed off. Donovan crouched to Zion's level. Go get ready for breakfast, son. Zion nodded and left. Now Donovan's cold grey eyes settled on Kia. You don't follow rules very well. Kia crossed her arms. Maybe your rules aren't built for protecting a child. A slow smirk touched his lips. You're either very brave or very foolish. I'm just not used to looking away when someone's hurting. Donovan stared at her for a long time. Then to her surprise, he said softly, Neither am I. Not anymore. And then he walked away. Kia stood frozen in place. She didn't know what had just happened between them, but for the second time since arriving at the mansion, she knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The mansion always felt like a museum. Quiet, grand, cold, but today it was tense. Kia dusted the tall bookshelves in the hallway outside Donovan Hayes' study, her mind still replaying the events of yesterday. Zion had barely spoken during breakfast. Mr. Greaves hadn't returned. And Donovan, he hadn't been seen since he sent everyone away. Maybe I pushed too far, she thought, gently polishing a gold frame. But every time she remembered the bruise on Zion's little arm, her guilt turned into fire. Down the hall, she heard soft footsteps, small, quick. She turned. Zion? The boy peeked out from behind the corner. Miss Kia, can I come with you? She smiled. Of course. He ran to her and grabbed her hand like a lifeline. They sat together in the sunroom, later, coloring. Zion's crayon gripped tightly in his hand, his little brow furrowed in concentration. Daddy doesn't smile like you, he said suddenly. Kia looked up. No? No, Zion said. He used to. Mommy used to make him. Then she died. Now he never smiles. Just watches. Kia swallowed. Do you miss her? Zion's lips pressed tight. I don't remember her that well, but I remember she smelled like coconut and always said I was her sunshine. He glanced at her. You smell like cocoa butter. It's nice. Her heart ached. You're somebody's sunshine too. Zion. Before he could respond, Mrs. Whitmore entered. Miss Evans, she said briskly, Mr. Hayes has requested your presence in his study. Kia's chest tightened. Requested? Zion squeezed her hand. It's okay. Daddy won't yell at you. Kia smiled weakly, stood, and followed Mrs. Whitmore down the hall. The door to Donovan Hayes' study was dark oak, carved with precision. Whitmore knocked once, opened it, and stepped aside. Mr. Hayes, Miss Evans. He looked up from behind a large mahogany desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened slightly. The air in the room felt thick, like something unspoken hovered between the bookshelves and shadows. Leave us, Donovan said without looking at Whitmore. Kia stepped inside. The door shut behind her. You asked to see me? She said, standing straight. He stared at her a moment, then gestured toward a chair. Sit. She sat. He didn't speak for a few seconds, just watched her with those cool, unreadable eyes. You're not like the others. Kia blinked. The others? The maids, the tutors, the nannies. He leaned back. You don't look at me with fear or flattery. You look at me like I'm human. She didn't know what to say to that. Shouldn't I? Donovan's eyes narrowed slightly. People usually see the bank account first, the scandal second, then the reputation. I haven't Googled you, Kia said softly. All I see is a man with a hurting son. That made something flicker in his expression. Surprise? Pain? He stood and walked slowly to the window. My wife died 3 years ago. Zion was 5. He saw it happen. Kia's breath caught. She drowned during a yacht trip. Everyone assumed I pushed her. The tabloids, my board members, her family. He turned back to her. But Zion knows. He saw her fall. He saw me jump in after her. He saw me fail. Kia's voice was barely above a whisper. You tried to save her. He nodded once. But it wasn't enough. And now, I can't save him either. She stood up slowly. You're wrong. His brow lifted. You saved him the moment you hired someone who actually cares about him. She stepped closer. Zion doesn't need perfection. He just needs love. Their eyes locked. For a moment, just one, Kia saw the wall around Donovan crack. Not fall, but crack. He looked tired, not from money or power, from pain. He ran a hand over his jaw. You're a maid, but you speak like a mother. I had to become one, Kia said, voice trembling. My mama died when I was 12. I raised my nana while working 2 jobs. I know what pain looks like. I know what being invisible feels like. Donovan stepped closer. The air between them shifted. Tell me, Miss Evans, what do you want from this job? Really? She blinked. Money to keep my nana in her care home, that's all. No dreams? No ambitions? I don't have the luxury to dream, Mr. Hayes. That silence stretched between them like a wire. Then Donovan said, Maybe you should start. And with that, he turned away. Zion likes the sunroom, he added, voice low. You can take him there anytime. Kia turned to leave, her heart thudding. As she opened the door, Donovan said one last thing. Thank you, Kia. She paused in the doorway. For the first time, he'd said her name. And for the first time, she realized he wasn't just cold, he was broken, and somehow she'd touched the cracks. The quiet peace of the mansion shattered the moment she arrived. It started with the sound of heels, sharp, deliberate, striking the marble floor like a countdown to war. Kia looked up from polishing the silver candlesticks in the formal dining room, just as the grand front door swung open. A tall, caramel-skinned woman entered, draped in a red bodycon dress and dripping with designer jewelry. Her honey-blonde weave cascaded down her back in Hollywood curls, and her lip gloss shone like glass. Her presence hit like perfume, overpowering and undeniable. Danielle Monroe, Atlanta socialite, reality TV villain, and, apparently, Donovan Hayes' fiancé. Behind her trailed a personal assistant and a toy-sized white dog in rhinestone booties. Kia quickly straightened her apron. Danielle's eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. One brow lifted. And who are you supposed to be? New help? Kia nodded politely. Yes, ma'am. Kia Evans. Danielle looked her over like she was a speck on her Louboutin. Cute, real, wholesome. Before Kia could reply, Zion came running into the room, holding a paper crown he'd made. Miss Kia, look what I... He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Danielle. His face dropped. Well, 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 Danielle said in a syrupy voice. If it isn't the little heir to the Hayes empire. She bent down, offering a stiff smile. Zion, darling, don't you want to give me a hug? Zion stepped back behind Kia's leg. No, thank you. Danielle's eyes flashed. That's not very polite. He doesn't have to if he doesn't want to, Kia said gently. Danielle straightened. Excuse me? Kia met her gaze, voice even. I said he's allowed to have boundaries. Danielle blinked in disbelief. Then she laughed. Oh, you're precious, but don't confuse your position. You're the help. I'm the future Mrs. Hayes. Kia held her tongue. Zion squeezed her hand tightly. Just then, Donovan entered. Danielle. She spun around with a smile so wide it looked painful. Baby. She walked toward him with arms open, but Donovan sidestepped the hug. Didn't know you were visiting today, he said coolly. Danielle's smile twitched. Well, I missed you. Thought I'd surprise you and spend some quality time with our little family. Donovan's eyes flicked to Zion, who stood clinging to Kia's side. Danielle noticed. Her voice turned sharp. Funny, I've never seen him cling to a maid before. Donovan's expression darkened. Zion trusts people who make him feel safe. Danielle's jaw tightened. Then she looked at Kia. You must be very proud. Winning the affection of a grieving child, that's a powerful currency in this house. Kia stayed quiet, her heart pounding, but she didn't move, didn't back down. Donovan looked between the two women. His eyes rested on Kia. Come with me, he said. Danielle's head whipped around. You're talking to her? But Donovan was already walking away. Kia hesitated, then followed. They ended up in the solarium, the glass ceiling casting golden light across the tile floor. Donovan closed the door behind them. I'm sorry about her, he said flatly. Danielle doesn't know how to make an entrance, only explosions. I've dealt with worse, Kia replied softly, though I can see why Zion's so afraid of her. Donovan's eyes sharpened. Has she said anything to him? Not today, Kia said carefully. But he clearly remembers her, and not in a good way. Donovan turned away, jaw clenched. She was never supposed to meet him. But a year ago, I made the mistake of thinking I needed a partner for business optics. Danielle was convenient. And now? He turned to face her. Now I realize she was just the loudest option, not the right one. Their eyes held for a beat too long. Kia looked away. Donovan cleared his throat. I'd like you to keep spending time with Zion, whenever he asks. Kia blinked. That might upset your fiancé. I don't care what upsets her. His voice was cold, certain. There was a knock on the solarium door. Mrs. Whitmore poked her head in, looking mildly disturbed. Apologies, sir. Miss Monroe is demanding a family dinner. Donovan sighed. Of course she is. He looked at Kia. You'll be there too. Her eyes widened. Me? You're part of this household, and Zion wants you there. That evening, dinner was a war zone dressed in candlelight. Danielle showed up wearing diamonds and malice. Kia wore her plain uniform and a quiet strength. Zion sat beside Kia, refusing to eat unless she helped him cut his food. Danielle watched every interaction like a hawk. Finally, she snapped. It's amazing, she said sweetly, how a child who barely talks to anyone has so much to say around the maid. Donovan's fork paused in midair. Zion looked down, embarrassed. Kia reached over and gently tapped his hand. It's okay, sweetheart. Just eat your chicken. Danielle slammed her napkin down. Why does he smile for you? He never even looks at me. The room fell dead silent. Donovan stood up slowly. Because you don't treat him like a person, you treat him like a pawn. Danielle's mouth opened, stunned. So this is what it is now? You're falling for the maid? He said nothing, which somehow said everything. Danielle turned to Kia. You think this is a fairy tale, that he's going to ride off with you and crown you queen of the penthouse? Kia stood slowly, her voice steady. I don't think anything. I just care about Zion. That's more than you've ever done. Danielle stared at her like she wanted to slap her. Donovan spoke one last time. Dinner's over. Danielle stormed out, stilettos clacking like thunder. Kia sat down again. Zion looked up at her, wide-eyed. Don't go, he whispered. Please don't go. She reached over and held his hand. I'm not going anywhere. The storm rolled in just after midnight. Thunder cracked over Atlanta like God was tearing the sky open. Rain hammered against the tall windows of the Hayes estate, rattling them in their frames. Kia lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep, not after what had happened at dinner. Donovan's silence, Danielle's accusations, Zion's fear, and the way Donovan had looked at her when he didn't deny falling for the maid. She turned onto her side and exhaled. "It's not your business, Kia. You're here for Zion, that's it." Then she heard it, a distant door creaking open, then small, frantic footsteps. She sat up instantly. "Zion?" Kia slipped into the hallway in her nightgown and robe, barefoot, her heart thudding. The marble floors were cold, and the long corridor stretched in eerie silence. Lightning flashed through the window. She saw him, Zion, outside, in the rain, barefoot, still in his pajamas, wandering across the patio, heading toward the pool. "Oh my God!" she breathed, and ran. Outside, the wind ripped at her robe as she dashed across the slick stones. "Zion!" she shouted, voice nearly lost in the downpour. He was at the edge of the pool now, staring into it like in a trance. "Zion, baby, stop!" She reached him just as he took another step, one foot slipping on the wet tile. She lunged, grabbed him. They both went down, hard. Kia's elbow slammed the pavement, but she held Zion close, shielding him with her body, as thunder boomed over them. He burst into sobs, clutching her. "I saw Mommy," he wailed. "She called me from the water." Kia held him tighter. "No, baby, that's not her, that's not her." She looked up, soaked and trembling, and saw Donovan standing under the veranda, eyes wide, shirt unbuttoned at the neck, barefoot, panicked. He sprinted to them. "Kia!" He dropped to his knees, scooping Zion into his arms. "What the hell happened?" he barked. "I heard him," Kia panted. "He sleepwalked outside." Donovan held Zion against his chest. "Jesus Christ!" Kia clutched her ribs, gasping for breath. "He thought his mother was in the pool." Donovan's face twisted. He looked haunted. "He saw her drown. I should have... Damn it, I should have locked the doors." Zion sobbed harder. "Don't leave me." Kia reached out and stroked his hair. "We're not going anywhere." Donovan looked at her, soaking wet, shivering, bruised. His throat worked silently. Then he picked up both Zion and Kia. "Come on, you're both freezing." Back inside, the nurse helped change Zion into dry clothes and tucked him into bed. But Zion refused to let go of Kia's hand. "Please stay," he whispered. Kia pulled a chair to his bedside. "I'm not leaving." Donovan watched from the doorway. The sight of them, Kia with her damp curls, Zion curled into her side, made something deep in his chest ache. He waited until the boy's eyes fluttered shut. Then he spoke. "Come with me." He led her to a locked hallway on the 3rd floor. One no staff was ever allowed to enter. He pulled out a key. "You're not supposed to be here," she said softly. He unlocked the door. "Neither are you." Inside was a private gallery, photos, memorabilia, a room full of memories sealed in silence. At the center stood a large portrait, Donovan, Zion, and a stunning woman with deep brown skin and regal cheekbones. "My wife, Asha," he said quietly. Kia stepped closer. She was beautiful. She loved this room. She said it was proof that even the coldest man had warmth somewhere. He paused. "When she died, I locked it. Haven't come back since." Kia looked at him. "Why now?" He met her eyes. "Because you make this house feel alive again." Lightning lit up the glass. She swallowed hard. "Donovan, I watched you tonight. The way you ran after Zion without thinking. You risked everything for him." "He's just a kid," she said, voice trembling. He stepped closer. "Number." He's my kid, and tonight you protected him more than anyone ever has, including me." Their breaths mingled in the dark. Something heavy hung between them, unspoken, electric. "Go to bed, Kia," he said suddenly, voice hoarse. She turned to leave, paused. "I'm not scared of you, Mr. Hayes." He smirked faintly. "You should be." But her footsteps down the hall didn't quicken, and for the first time in years, Donovan Hayes felt his guard fall. Donovan stood in the dark hallway, long after Kia disappeared down the staircase. Rain still tapped at the mansion's windows like a heartbeat. He stared at the portrait of Asher one more time. But tonight it didn't feel like a shrine. It felt like a chapter beginning to close. Or maybe something else was finally starting. Downstairs, Kia sat by her bedroom window, wrapped in a towel, heart pounding from everything that had just happened. Her skin was dry now, but her soul was soaked in questions. What had she seen in Donovan's eyes? Grief, yes, but also something else. A need, not just for a woman, but for healing. She pressed her palm to the window, looking out into the night. "God," she thought, "what are you doing with me here?" The next morning, the mansion was unusually quiet. Kia changed into her uniform and headed toward the kitchen. She expected to find Mrs. Whitmore with a list of chores, but instead she was met with a surprise. Donovan Hayes, standing by the espresso machine in casual slacks and a black-fitted sweater, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. She froze mid-step. "Good morning." He turned. "You're up early." "I always am." He handed her a cup of coffee. "I figured." Kia blinked. "For me?" He nodded. She took it slowly. "Thanks." She sipped. It was perfectly brewed. He leaned against the counter, watching her. "Zion's still sleeping. He had a rough night." Kia nodded. "I'll check on him after breakfast." Donovan was quiet for a long moment. "You ever think about teaching? You're good with kids." "I wanted to," she admitted, "but school was expensive. I barely finished high school after my mom died. Been working since I was 16. His jaw tensed. "That's a shame." She shrugged. "It's life. I learned early not to expect miracles." Donovan tilted his head. "Maybe you should start." She glanced up. "You keep saying that." He took a step closer. "Because I think you are one." Her breath caught. Before she could speak, Zion's voice rang out from the hallway. "Miss Kia!" Kia turned just as Zion barreled into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas. He hugged her around the waist like she was the only stable thing in his world. "Are you okay?" he asked her. "You were all wet last night." She smiled and ran her fingers through his curls. "I'm just fine, sweetheart." Donovan watched them, a lump forming in his throat. The image was too perfect, like a family snapshot from a dream he never thought he was allowed to have. Later that morning, Kia took Zion to the backyard garden for fresh air. The boy was laughing, running between the trimmed hedges and marble statues, with a toy airplane in hand. Donovan watched from the third-floor balcony, unseen, arms folded. For the first time in a long time, Zion looked like a child, not a haunted shadow, and it was because of her. Suddenly, Mrs. Whitmore appeared beside him. "May I speak freely, sir?" Donovan nodded. "I've been with this household since before Zion was born. I've seen tutors come and go, nannies, assistants, even therapists. None of them ever got that boy to laugh." Donovan didn't respond. Mrs. Whitmore pressed on. "That girl, Kia, she's got something special." He glanced at her. "You think I don't know that?" Mrs. Whitmore arched a brow. "Then why haven't you told her?" Donovan turned back to the window, voice low. "Because I don't want to destroy her." Mrs. Whitmore was quiet a moment. "You won't, but if you let someone else, you'll never forgive yourself." That afternoon, a sleek black sports car pulled up outside the estate. Kia stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing grapes for Zion. when Mrs. Whitmore's voice called out, "You may want to prepare yourself." Kia turned, just as Malik walked in. Tall, light-skinned, gold chain. His signature smug grin twisted his face as he leaned against the counter like he owned the room. "Well, well, well, look who finally upgraded her hustle." Kia froze. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I came to see how my little wifey's doing," Malik sneered. "Look at you, maid in a billionaire's mansion. Bet you're cleaning more than just floors." "Don't you dare!" she snapped. "We're not married. We were done the moment you put hands on me." Malik laughed. "Don't be dramatic. You were nothing until me." Kia clenched her jaw. "Leave, now!" He moved closer. "Or what?" A voice cut in, Donovan's, low, deadly. "Or you'll leave in an ambulance." Malik turned, startled. "Yo, this your sugar daddy?" Donovan walked forward, slow and dangerous. "Get out, I won't say it again." Malik raised his hands mockingly. "Relax, boss man, I just wanted to talk to her." Touch her, threaten her, or even look at her the wrong way again. Donovan's voice dropped. "And I'll make sure you never get near another woman." Security guards appeared at the door. Malik scoffed. "This ain't over." Donovan stepped forward, eyes cold. "Yes, it is." Malik was escorted out. Kia stood frozen, hands shaking slightly. Donovan turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded, swallowing. "I didn't know he knew where I worked." "He won't come back," Donovan said firmly. She looked up. "Why do you care so much?" Donovan stepped closer. "Because I can't stand seeing you afraid." Their eyes locked. Something cracked open between them again. But before it could deepen, Zion ran in. "Daddy, Kia, I drew us all together." He held up a crayon picture. Donovan, Zion, and Kia, holding hands in front of a mansion. Kia's heart squeezed. Donovan took the paper, staring at it. Zion grinned. "It's our family." Donovan looked at Kia. "He's not wrong." Kia didn't know what to say, but her heart said everything. That evening, Donovan stood alone in his study. He stared at the drawing Zion made. He whispered to himself, "Why is she so brave for my son?" The answer struck him like thunder. Because she's the only one who truly sees him, and maybe the only one who's ever truly seen me. And in that moment, Donovan Hayes realized he wasn't falling for Kia Evans. He already had. The next day began with silence, but not peace. Kia stood by the kitchen island, stirring oatmeal while watching the front gate through the window. Even though Malik had been thrown out, something about yesterday's encounter clung to her like smoke. The way he smirked, the threat in his tone, it hadn't felt final, and that scared her. She turned at the sound of soft feet behind her. Zion. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, forcing a smile. He rubbed his eyes and shuffled toward her in his fuzzy dinosaur slippers. "Is that the kind with brown sugar?" She grinned. "Extra brown sugar, just how you like it." Zion climbed onto the kitchen stool and yawned. "You okay, Miss Kia?" The question nearly unraveled her. She nodded slowly. "Yeah, baby, I'm okay." But inside she wasn't sure she was. Donovan sat alone in his study, staring at his phone. He'd made a few calls overnight, quiet ones, discreet ones. Within hours, his team had pulled everything on Malik Dorsey, Kia's ex. Multiple domestic violence complaints, a restraining order filed 2 years ago, debt, street-level scams, arrests sealed or dropped. Donovan's jaw tightened. He didn't care about the legal fog. He didn't care about the warnings. All he saw was a threat, and threats to Kia were no longer tolerable. Later that afternoon, Kia took Zion into the city for his pediatric therapy appointment. Donovan offered to send a driver, but she insisted she could handle it. He respected her independence, but sent security anyway, quietly. While Zion was inside with the therapist, Kia stepped into a nearby coffee shop to grab something warm. She stood by the window, waiting for her order, when she felt it, that prickle on her neck, that uneasy sense that she was being watched. Then a voice behind her. "You thought that rich man could save you from me?" She spun around. Malik. He stood just feet away, grinning, no security in sight. What are you doing here?" she demanded. He stepped closer. "Did you tell your new man about your little hospital stay? About how crazy you got after your mama died? Huh?" Her breath caught. Malik smirked. "You think you're better now, just because you scrubbed some rich man's toilets?" "Get away from me." "You gonna make me?" he mocked, stepping close enough for her to feel his breath. The coffee shop cashier shouted, "Sir, you need to leave." Then the doors slammed open. Donovan Hayes stormed in, no suit, just a black shirt, black jeans, and pure rage. His voice was calm. Too calm. "If you ever touch her again..." He moved fast, grabbed Malik by the collar, slammed him against the glass window with a force that shook the entire shop. Kia gasped, "Donovan!" But he wasn't hearing anything, his hand pressed into Malik's chest. "You want to threaten a woman who already escaped you? You want to follow her across the city like some desperate broke shadow?" His voice dropped. "Let me make this clear." He leaned closer, eyes like ice. "If you even breathe near her again, I will bury you in legal hell so deep, you'll never claw your way out. You think you're street? I own the streets. You'll vanish and no one will ask why." Malik trembled beneath him. "Donovan," Kia said again, voice shaking. He finally looked at her. Her eyes were wide with fear, not of him, but of what he might become. Donovan released Malik, who stumbled backward like a coward unmasked. Security stormed in a moment later, grabbing Malik. "Take him," Donovan said. "I want his record triple flagged. He comes within 100 feet of her. He goes down." The guards nodded and dragged Malik out, flailing. Donovan turned to Kia, chest heaving. But she didn't flinch. She walked forward, and then, without hesitation, wrapped her arms around him. He froze, his body, still coiled with fury, slowly relaxed as her warmth surrounded him. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I'm okay." He held her tighter. "He's not going to touch you again. I promise." Back at the mansion that evening, Donovan sat alone in the garden lounge, drink in hand, staring at the night sky. The confrontation still pulsed in his blood, but what haunted him most wasn't Malik. It was Kia's face, the strength in her, the way she still chose grace over fear. She came outside quietly, barefoot, in a long robe. He didn't turn. "I shouldn't have lost control," he said softly. "You didn't. You protected me." "I nearly snapped his spine." "I've wanted to do worse," she said honestly. "But you didn't. You stopped when I needed you to." He turned to her finally. "You make me want to be someone better," he murmured. "You already are." Their eyes locked, and then he said it, quiet, low, and full of something dangerous. "I don't want to be your boss anymore." Kia's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" "I mean I want to be more, and I know I shouldn't, but I can't look at you without feeling things I've locked away for years." Kia stepped closer. Her fingers trembled as she reached for his. "But what about Danielle?" "I'm ending it. It was over long before you came. I just didn't realize it." She didn't speak, so he did. "I see how Zion looks at you, like he finally feels safe again. I see how I look at you, like I finally feel alive again." "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I didn't expect it." "Neither did I." He reached for her hand. "But now that it's here, I don't want to let it go." Tears filled her eyes. He pulled her into his arms. This time she didn't resist. And as she leaned into him, all the noise, the threats, the fears, The walls finally faded. Kia sat at the edge of her bed, knees pulled up to her chest. Moonlight poured through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the room. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since the moment Donovan had held her in the garden. He hadn't kissed her. He hadn't said the word love. But he didn't need to. It was in his eyes, his voice, the way he trembled when she touched him. And it scared her. Not because she didn't feel the same, but because she did. The next morning, she avoided the main wing of the mansion. She needed time to think, to breathe. She threw herself into cleaning, scrubbing the staircase railings, vacuuming under the furniture, polishing silver, folding sheets with military precision. But no amount of chores could keep her thoughts from drifting back to Donovan, to Zion, to the way she felt in that brief, perfect moment when Donovan held her like she was his anchor in a world made of storms. By mid-afternoon, Kia was dusting the chandelier in the foyer when Mrs. Whitmore walked in with a sealed envelope. "You have a visitor." Kia blinked. "Who?" Mrs. Whitmore's voice was unreadable. "Your grandmother's nurse dropped off a letter." Kia quickly pulled off her gloves and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Care home bill due. Insurance declined last month. Outstanding balance, $4,892. Her breath left her in a rush. She sat on the bottom step, fingers trembling as she read it again. And again. There was no way she could pay that. Not with her current wages. She'd been sending every spare dollar home just to cover Nana's medication. And now, this. The walls felt like they were closing in. She was still sitting there, numb, when Donovan appeared at the top of the stairs. "Kia!" She looked up quickly and folded the letter, hiding it. "Yes, sir?" He raised an eyebrow. "Back to sir?" She stood slowly. "Just trying to stay professional." He descended the stairs, his eyes never leaving her face. "That's not what this is." "What is this?" she asked, voice soft. "Because I'm still the maid. You're still the billionaire, and no matter how you look at me, I'm not from your world." He stopped a few steps above her. "You're right," he said. Her chest tightened. "I've spent years building a world of glass and steel, of suits and secrets, of contracts and control." His voice dropped. "And you, Kaya Evans, walked in and shattered every wall I had." She looked away. "You're just saying that because I saved Zion." I'm saying that because you saved me too." Her throat burned. "You don't know what it's like to grow up with nothing, to work jobs where you're invisible, to be used, to love people who treat you like dirt and still pray they'll change." He stepped down the last stair and cupped her face gently. "I don't know that pain," he said, "but I see yours, and I'd do anything to carry it with you." Tears threatened to fall. She shook her head. "You don't understand. I can't fall in love with you." "Why?" "Because I already have." That night, she sat in the staff lounge, alone, staring at the letter again. Donovan hadn't pressed her for details, but she knew he saw the fear in her eyes. She didn't want his money. She didn't want to feel like she owed him anything, but she didn't want to lose her grandmother either. The next morning, Kia walked into Donovan's office, holding her resignation letter. He looked up from his desk, eyes immediately wary. "What's this?" She laid it down. "I can't keep doing this." He stood. "Why?" "I'm falling deeper every day, and it's messing with my head, my heart. I didn't come here to be rescued. I came here to work." He crossed to her in 2 long strides. "You think this is charity?" "I think I'm losing myself," she whispered. "I think you're finally finding yourself," he said. She looked up at him, eyes wet. "Please, just let me go before this gets harder." His hands clenched at his sides. "You don't get to quit on me, Kia. Not after what you've given this house. Zion needs you." I love him too much to stay and confuse him, she whispered. If this turns messy... He reached out, took her face in his hands. It's already messy, it's already real, and I don't care. I'll fight through every mess if it means I get to keep you. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him, but her fear was louder than her hope. She stepped back. I need time. Then she turned and walked away. That night, Kia packed a small overnight bag. She couldn't bring herself to leave completely. Not yet, but she needed distance. She called an Uber to take her to her friend Brielle's place across town. She waited in the foyer for the driver. Zion found her first. Where are you going? She turned to see him at the bottom of the stairs, hugging his stuffed lion, eyes wide. I'm going to visit my friend, she said carefully. His lips trembled. Are you coming back? She knelt down. Of course I am, I promise. Are you mad at Daddy? No, baby, I'm just confused. Zion stepped forward. I don't want you to go. Kia hugged him tightly. I'll be back. You hear me? I just need a little time. He nodded slowly. Donovan appeared behind him, silent. Their eyes met. Kia stood. He didn't say anything, neither did she. But as she stepped out the front door and into the rain, her heart broke. Because walking away from him felt like leaving behind something she had waited her whole life to find. That night, alone in Brielle's apartment, Kia sat on the floor, curled under a throw blanket. Brielle offered her wine and advice, but Kia barely spoke. She kept replaying his words. You don't get to quit on me, Kia. She closed her eyes and whispered into the dark. I don't belong in his world, but why won't he let me go? And somewhere in the mansion across town, Donovan stood alone in Zion's room, holding his son as he slept, wondering the same thing. It had been 2 days since Kia left the mansion. 2 long, slow days. Donovan hadn't slept, Zion barely ate, and the staff walked on eggshells as the energy in the Hayes estate dipped into something cold, unspoken, and heavy. Each morning, Donovan stared at his phone, thumb hovering over Kia's contact, but pride and fear always stopped him. She said she needed time, but time was beginning to feel like punishment. Kia, meanwhile, sat at the window of Brielle's apartment, hugging her knees. Her friend's place was bright, filled with plants and lavender candles, but it felt nothing like home. Home, somehow, was him and Zion. Her phone buzzed for the 10th time that day. She didn't even look. It wasn't Donovan. It was the care home again. Her grandmother's bill had gone unpaid for weeks. They were threatening to discharge her. Kia closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. She couldn't stay away forever. Zion didn't deserve this silence, and neither did Donovan. Not really. Whatever else was breaking inside her, she still loved them both. She just didn't know how to love them without losing herself. That night, a call came, from Mrs. Whitmore, urgent, breathless. There's been a fire. Come quickly. The mansion glowed red and blue under the lights of fire trucks and ambulances. Smoke still curled from one of the upstairs balconies. The air was thick with sirens and shouts. Kia jumped out of the Uber barefoot, heart in her throat. She sprinted toward the front gates, ducking under caution tape, ignoring the shouts of staff. Where is he? Where's Zion? She found Donovan near the front lawn, his hands covered in soot, his shirt torn, blood on his forehead. Kia! Where is he? She screamed, eyes wild. Donovan grabbed her arms. He's inside. He wouldn't come out. He thought you were gone for good. He locked himself in his mother's old room. Kia didn't think. She ran. The stairs were slippery from water. Smoke curled through the air, choking her lungs. Flames licked at the edge of the second-floor guest room hallway. She heard the crack of wood, the groan of collapsing plaster, and then Zion's scream. Help! Somebody! Help me! Zion! She screamed, covering her mouth with her sleeve as she ran. She found him crouched behind a bed, surrounded by fire, eyes wide with terror. "Mama!" he sobbed. "Mama, help me!" Kia didn't hesitate. She rushed in, grabbed him, and wrapped her arms around his body, shielding him with her own. "It's me, baby. It's Miss Kia. I've got you." "I thought you left forever." "I'm never leaving again." She scooped him into her arms and ran. A beam fell behind them, splintering the floor. She leapt over debris, dodging flames, her robe catching at the hem. Then, strong arms. Donovan. He reached them halfway down the stairs, eyes wild with relief and horror. He grabbed both of them into his arms and carried them the rest of the way down like they were made of gold. Outside, EMTs rushed to them. Kia collapsed to her knees on the lawn, coughing violently. Zion clung to her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. Donovan crouched beside them, hands shaking. "I thought I lost you," he choked. "You almost did," she whispered hoarsely. Zion wrapped both arms around her neck. "You came back," he sobbed. "I always will." They were rushed to the ER smoke inhalation, cuts, bruises, minor injuries, but the emotional toll? Massive. Later, in a quiet hospital room with cream-colored walls, Kia lay in the bed, IV in her arm, Zion asleep beside her, his tiny fingers wrapped around hers. Donovan stood in the doorway. He looked like hell, smoke still in his hair, shirt streaked with ash, blood on his temple. But his eyes? They only saw her. He crossed the room and sat in the chair beside her bed. For the first time since she'd known him, Donovan Hayes didn't try to look like a billionaire. He looked like a man, wounded, grateful, and finally ready. "You risked your life," he said quietly. "I told you," she said, brushing Zion's curls. "He's not just your son anymore." Donovan swallowed hard. "When they pulled me out of the house, and you weren't behind me, I thought I'd die right there." She didn't speak. He reached for her hand. "I've been a coward, Kia. I thought I was protecting you by staying silent, letting you leave. I thought you deserved better than my world, but I was wrong." "Donovan." "Number. Listen." His voice trembled. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known, and I'm not saying that to flatter you. I'm saying it because it's true, and if I have to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the love you've already shown us." His voice cracked. "Then I will." She covered his hand with hers. He leaned forward, lips near her forehead, then stopped. "May I?" She nodded. He kissed her, softly, reverently. Zion stirred slightly, but didn't wake. His little body curled into her side like instinct. Donovan whispered against her forehead. "Marry me." Kia's breath caught. Her heart thundered. "What?" He leaned back, eyes glassy. "I've almost lost you twice. I'm not waiting for a third time. I don't care about tabloids or status or rules. I care about this. You, Zion, us." She stared at him, stunned. "I know it's fast, but life's too short for slow." Kia looked down at Zion's hand holding hers, looked at the man in front of her, broken open and honest, and she whispered, "Yes." Donovan blinked. "Yes?" She smiled softly. "Yes, I'll marry you." He let out a shaky breath and buried his face in her hand, exhaling like a man who'd just been pulled from a wreckage. And when she rested her head back on the pillow, eyes drifting closed, Zion nestled between them. One thought echoed in her soul. Maybe I didn't belong in his world, but somehow his world became mine. Sunlight streamed through the hospital room the next morning, soft and golden. Kia stirred slowly, eyes fluttering open to the soft sounds of a cartoon playing on the small TV in the corner. Zion was sitting beside her in the bed, legs crossed, happily munching on a chocolate chip muffin. His stuffed lion rested on his lap. "You're awake," he beamed. She smiled sleepily. "Good morning, lovebug." He leaned in and kissed her cheek. "Daddy said you're going to marry him." Her heart skipped. She looked toward the window. Donovan stood there, one hand in his pocket, eyes locked on her. Zion didn't wait. He scrambled off the bed and ran out the door in search of more muffins. Now it was just the two of them. Kia sat up slowly, tugging the thin hospital blanket over her lap. Donovan walked to her bedside, his face unreadable. She was about to speak when he reached into his jacket and pulled out a ring box. Her breath hitched. He didn't kneel, not here, not in a hospital, but somehow the gesture felt grander for its simplicity. He opened the box. Inside was a stunning ring, elegant, gold-banded, with a modest but radiant diamond. Classy, timeless. It didn't scream wealth, it whispered meaning. "It belonged to my mother," he said quietly. "I never thought I'd give it to anyone." Kia's lips parted. He looked her in the eye. "I don't need time to be sure. I don't need approval. I need you. Every day, every breath. Will you wear this and walk through life with me?" Tears slipped down her cheek as she nodded. "Yes, yes, Donovan." He slipped the ring on her finger, and for the first time in years, Donovan Hayes smiled with his whole heart. The hospital let her go later that afternoon. The fire had destroyed the east wing of the mansion, but Zion's room and the guest quarters were untouched. Donovan arranged for restoration to begin immediately, but even as the house began healing, the real storm was just beginning. 2 days later, while Kia helped Zion water plants in the garden, she noticed Mrs. Whitmore standing stiffly by the fountain, a folded newspaper in hand. The old woman didn't speak. She simply handed it to her and walked away. Kia opened it slowly. Front page of the Atlanta Star. Billionaire Donovan Hayes, engaged to former housemaid after mansion fire scandal. Sources confirmed that the billionaire CEO proposed just hours after a fire broke out at his estate, endangering his son. The bride-to-be, Kia Evans, 22, formerly employed as a live-in maid. Critics are raising eyebrows about the timing and nature of the relationship. Kia's stomach twisted. She flipped the page. More headlines. A Cinderella or a gold digger? Housemaid hero or hustler? Kia Evans' troubled past emerges. Photos of her. Grainy shots taken from outside the hospital. Even an old photo of her from high school when she'd been caught stealing food for her sick mother, a petty crime she'd paid for with community service. She dropped the paper, fingers shaking. Brielle's voice rang in her head. "Be careful. When you get close to rich men, the world doesn't just whisper. It screams." Donovan was on a conference call when Mrs. Whitmore burst into his office, paper in hand. He saw the headline and snapped. "I need everyone on the PR team in my office in 1 hour." He growled into the phone. "And get Marcus right now." His assistant stammered through the line. "Sir, Marcus is the one who leaked it." Donovan froze. "What?" "There's an anonymous source listed in all 3 articles, but the phrasing matches Marcus's last email. I double-checked." Donovan's hand curled into a fist. Marcus Langston, his longtime business partner, and the one who always thought Kia was a liability. That night, Kia stayed locked in her guest room. She didn't come to dinner, didn't answer when Donovan knocked. She was sitting on the floor, phone buzzing with messages, some from friends, some from strangers. Most were cruel. "Hope the ring's worth your dignity." "Maid today, millionaire tomorrow. Get it, girl." "You ain't special, just next." She turned her phone off, wrapped her arms around her knees, and sobbed. The door creaked open. Donovan stepped inside. He didn't say a word. He sat on the floor beside her and placed his hand over hers. "I should have protected you from this." She shook her head. "You couldn't have known." "I did. I knew the moment I gave you that ring, the world would come for you. I just didn't think they'd be so fast, so cruel." She looked at him. "They called me a liar, a thief. They said I'm using you." "You're not." "But they believe I am. Then let them. His voice hardened. Let them talk. We know the truth. She wiped her cheeks. It's not just about us. My grandmother's nurse called. Reporters have been calling the care home pretending to be doctors, asking about me. Her. Donovan's jaw clenched. It ends now. He stood. She followed him out to the patio, unsure what he meant. He pulled out his phone, put it on speaker, and dialed. Ms. Lena Rooks, he said, voice cold. This is Donovan Hayes. You ran the story about my engagement? A woman answered, hesitant. Yes, Mr. Hayes, we retract it, or tomorrow morning I will launch a defamation suit so loud it'll echo through every courtroom in the state. But our source? Your source is a disgruntled partner who has been under investigation for embezzlement since last quarter. I'd be happy to leak that to your competitors. Silence. Your retraction. By 8 a.m. or war. He hung up. Kia stared at him, wide-eyed. I fought boardrooms, he said. I fought investors. I'll fight tabloids now too. For you. She reached for his hand. Donovan. He turned, voice rough with emotion. Don't give up on me. She shook her head. I'm scared. So am I. They stood in silence under the night sky. Then he whispered, I'll ask again when the smoke clears. But whether it's in a church, a courtroom, or the middle of this damn patio, I still want to marry you. She smiled through her tears. And I'll still say yes. 3 days after the scandal broke, Donovan held a private press conference. He stood tall in a navy suit, every line of his posture calm and composed. But anyone looking closely could see it, the tension in his jaw, the darkness under his eyes. Kia stood behind the curtain, heart thudding in her chest. Donovan had begged her not to come, but she insisted. I won't hide, she had told him. They already called me a gold digger, a liar. If I stay quiet, they win. Now, as the cameras clicked and lights flashed, Donovan stepped to the podium and adjusted the mic. Good afternoon, he began. I'm here today not to respond to gossip, but to defend truth, and the woman I love. Gasps whispered through the crowd. He didn't flinch. 3 days ago, an article was published accusing Ms. Kia Evans, my fiancée, of manipulating her way into this family. Those accusations are not only false, they are malicious. A reporter raised a hand. But Mr. Hayes, sources say, my son's life was in danger. Ms. Evans saved him, at great risk to herself. She entered this house as an employee and became its heart. That is the truth. A second voice. Did you pay off her grandmother's medical bills? Donovan nodded. I did, just as I've paid the bills of several of my staff members' families in the past. Not because I was obligated, because I could, and because I care. Murmurs spread. Another reporter tried again. So are you confirming you're marrying her? He stepped back, gaze fierce. I'm confirming that I already asked, and she said yes. Then, without fanfare, he turned toward the curtain. Kia! She stepped out, back straight, heart pounding. Dressed in a pale peach blouse and fitted black trousers, her curls pinned back in soft waves, she looked nothing like the girl the tabloids had mocked. She looked like a woman in command of her truth. The room fell silent. She stepped to the podium beside Donovan. I never asked to be the center of anyone's story, she said, voice steady. I've cleaned houses since I was 16. I've worked doubles and overnights. I never imagined I'd fall in love with a man who lived in a mansion. She paused. But I did. And not because of his money, because of his heart, because of his son. Her voice tightened. I didn't seduce Donovan Hayes. I soothed his grieving child. I made his favorite peanut butter sandwiches. I read him bedtime stories. I listened. A single clap started in the back, then more, until the entire room applauded. Donovan took her hand in his, lifted it gently, and whispered, "Let them see it." They walked off the stage together, unbroken. Later that night, back at the mansion, Donovan and Kia sat together in the study. A fire crackled softly in the hearth, not born of tragedy this time, but of comfort. He poured her a glass of wine and touched her hand. "You didn't have to speak today." "I did," she replied, "because if I don't define myself, they will." He leaned forward. "You defined yourself so well today. I think half the city fell in love with you." She laughed softly. "Let 'em. I only belong to one man." He smiled. "I'm trying to be worthy of that." Then his expression shifted. "There's something else you should know. About Marcus." Kia's eyes narrowed. "What about him?" "He's been embezzling from the company for months. The board's investigating him now, and he's the one who leaked your juvenile record." Her breath caught. "I thought you said it was sealed." "It was. He paid someone to dig." Kia's fists clenched. "He tried to ruin me." Donovan nodded. "And he failed. But I don't want him anywhere near you again." "What are you going to do?" Donovan's voice dropped. "I'm buying out his shares, publicly, then cutting ties." "Won't that hurt your company?" "Maybe," he admitted, "but I'd rather lose a few points in stock than spend one more day partnered with a man who'd humiliate the woman I love." Kia looked at him like he'd grown wings. "You're serious?" "Deadly." She leaned forward. "You're not just fighting for me." "I'm fighting for us." The next morning, Donovan took her to the company's downtown skyscraper. They entered through the private executive elevator. The whole building buzzed with energy, half from nerves, half from awe. The billionaire had returned, and this time, he brought the maid-turned-fiancé with him. People whispered, some smiled, some glared. Kia walked beside him, chin high. In the boardroom, a long polished table gleamed under golden light. Executives turned as they entered. Some rose. Marcus was already seated at the far end, smirking like a snake with a lawyer in his pocket. Donovan didn't flinch. "This won't take long," he said. He turned to his legal advisor. "The documents?" The advisor passed a thick folder forward. "Effective immediately, Marcus Langston is removed from the board, and his shares will be bought at fair market value." Gasps. Marcus stood. "You can't do that." "I just did." Donovan's voice was ice. "You're replacing me with a maid?" Marcus hissed. "No," Donovan said calmly. "I'm replacing you with someone who has integrity. Kia's not taking your job, but she's sitting beside me for the rest of my life, and that makes her more powerful than you'll ever be." Kia didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence alone was a victory. That evening, Donovan and Kia returned home to find Zion waiting in the foyer with Mrs. Whitmore. He ran to them, clutching a drawing. It was a stick-figure wedding scene. Him in the middle, Kia in a big gown, Donovan in a tux, a giant heart over their heads. "I made this today," he said. "It's our family." Donovan crouched and pulled him into a hug. "It's perfect." Zion looked up. "When are you getting married?" Donovan looked at Kia. She smiled. "Soon, baby. Very soon." Later that night, under a warm candlelit bath, Kia soaked in silence while Donovan massaged her shoulders from behind. The city shimmered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I never imagined this," she whispered. "What?" "Being loved, out loud, in front of the world." He kissed her shoulder gently. "Well, get used to it. I'm not hiding you, ever." She turned to face him. "Donovan, when I met you, you were so cold." "I was frozen," he whispered. "You thawed me." She leaned into him, and for the first time in her life, she let herself feel safe. It had rained all night, not the soft kind of rain that whispers on rooftops, but a torrential storm that beat against the mansion windows, like nature itself, was warning of what was to come. The wedding was planned for that morning. Simple, private, and elegant. Just 20 guests, a garden ceremony at the rear estate, Zion as the ring-bearer, and Kia in a white off-shoulder gown that she still couldn't believe belonged to her. But as she stood in front of the mirror, veil in hand, her stomach twisted into knots. Something was off. She could feel it. Downstairs, Donovan paced the marble foyer, black tux perfectly tailored, but his expression taut with tension. Mrs. Whitmore approached, frowning. "Sir, there's a situation." He turned immediately. "What is it?" She hesitated. "Kia's grandmother's care home. Someone called pretending to be you. They told the staff you revoked payment. They were preparing to transfer her to a state facility." Donovan's eyes narrowed. "Who?" "They won't say, but she's upset. Very upset." He didn't waste another second. "Have a car brought around, now." Meanwhile, upstairs, Kia clutched her phone, tears stinging her eyes. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You said the bills were covered. Now they're kicking her out." The nurse on the other end sounded apologetic. "I'm sorry, Kia. We were told by someone claiming to be Donovan Hayes's financial agent. We wouldn't have called you otherwise." The line went dead. She stood frozen in place, veil slipping from her hand. How could this be happening? Today, of all days. A quiet knock came at her door. It was Brielle, dressed in a satin bridesmaid gown. "I just saw Mrs. Whitmore's face. What happened?" Kia held up the phone. "Someone's sabotaging us." "Donovan?" "Number, I don't believe that. But someone close to him. Maybe Marcus again. Maybe someone else. I don't know." She turned to the mirror, voice cracking. "What if this whole wedding is a mistake? What if it all comes crashing down around us?" Brielle took her hand. "Girl, look at you. You're glowing. You're powerful. You love that man, and he loves you. That's not a mistake. That's the kind of truth that survives storms. But I don't want to walk down that aisle with this fear in my heart." "Then don't." Brielle's eyes gleamed. "Find him. Talk to him. Fix this together. This ain't some fairy tale where you wait around to be saved. You're the one who runs into fires, remember?" Kia wiped her cheeks. "You're right." Then she grabbed her coat, yanked off her veil, and ran out the room, barefoot. The storm hadn't stopped. By the time she reached the carport, Donovan's car was already gone. She asked the security guard where he went. The man replied, "To the care home," said it was urgent. Kia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone, called a rideshare, and headed there herself. She didn't want to meet him at the altar. She needed to meet him in the fire. 30 minutes later, Kia stepped out of the car in front of Green Hill Care Center, soaked to the skin. The receptionist gasped, "Ma'am, you can't." "I'm here for my grandmother. She's safe. Mr. Hayes is upstairs with her." Room 208. Kia didn't wait. She sprinted down the hallway, water trailing behind her, heels in one hand. She reached the doorway and stopped. Inside, Donovan sat beside Nana Esther's bed, holding her wrinkled hand, whispering softly. Nana looked peaceful, calm. Kia stepped inside slowly. Donovan looked up and froze. "Kia," she swallowed. "I had to come." He stood, crossing the room, wiping rain from her forehead with his handkerchief. "I don't know who did it," he said, "but I swear to you, I'll find them." She nodded. "I know." His eyes flicked down to her soaked dress, then back up. "You're supposed to be wearing white." She smiled softly. "I'll wear anything, as long as I'm walking toward you." He exhaled, forehead resting against hers. "I was so scared you wouldn't come." "I almost didn't," she whispered, "but then I remembered how you came for me, over and over, and I realized I'm not marrying a perfect man. I'm marrying a real one." Donovan closed his eyes, visibly overwhelmed. Behind them, Nana Esther whispered, "Now that's love." They both laughed. An hour later, the rain stopped. Clouds parted. The sun peeked through like a blessing. They stood in a quiet gazebo on the mansion's back lawn, surrounded by dripping roses and damp white chairs. Most of the guests had gone home, but Kia didn't care, because Zion stood beside her in a little black tux, eyes shining, and Donovan held her hands like he never wanted to let go. The officiant smiled gently. "We gather here not for spectacle, but for something more lasting. Truth, trust, and love." Kia spoke first. "I never thought I'd be standing here, not after what I've been through. But Donovan Hayes, you walked through my fears like they were doors meant to be opened. You saw me before anyone else did. You taught me that my heart wasn't broken, it was brave." Donovan squeezed her hands. Then he spoke. "You changed my life, Kia Evans. From the moment I heard your voice reading to Zion, something shifted in me. You reminded me of softness, of family, of laughter. I spent so long trying to build an empire, and then I met the woman who gave me something I couldn't buy, peace." Tears flowed freely. "By the power vested in me," the officiant smiled, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Donovan leaned in and kissed her, not like a man who owned the world, but like a man who had finally found home. That evening, they danced barefoot in the ballroom, just the three of them, Donovan, Kia, and Zion, spinning slowly under a chandelier, still missing a few crystals from the fire. Kia rested her head on Donovan's chest. Zion stood on his father's shoes, giggling. "I love you," she whispered. "I know," Donovan said, "and I'm never letting go." The breeze carried the soft scent of jasmine through the open French doors of the seaside villa. Waves lapped in the distance, and sunlight poured across the pale wood floors in golden streaks. Kia sat on the wide, cushioned chaise in the sunroom, gently rocking the newest love of her life, her son, Donovan Jr. 3 months old, a perfect blend of his father's strong brow and her full lips. She whispered to him softly, brushing his curls. "You've got your daddy's eyes, baby boy, which means trouble already." Zion burst into the room in his school uniform, backpack half-zipped, sneakers untied. "Ma, the driver's gonna leave without me again." Kia laughed. "Zion, tie your shoes." Donovan appeared behind him, already dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, coffee in one hand, the other gently fixing Zion's collar. "We've got time. Relax." Zion grinned and kissed his little brother on the forehead, before rushing out again. Donovan crossed the room and knelt beside Kia. He looked at her the way he always did now, not like she was fragile or untouchable, but like she was his whole world. "How's my queen?" "Sleep-deprived, sore, completely in love." He kissed her cheek. "I'll take that." She smiled, nestling their baby against her chest. "You said you had meetings today." "I pushed them. Today's too beautiful. Let's stay in." Kia raised an eyebrow. "Donovan Hayes skipping work?" "For you, always." That afternoon, as Zion headed off to school, Donovan led Kia to the patio, where a private chef was already laying out a brunch spread. Fresh fruit, croissants, orange juice in glass pitchers. A white canopy fluttered overhead, shading them from the sun. It was exactly 1 year to the day since their wedding. 12 months ago, they were standing in a rain-soaked gazebo with torn flowers and trembling hands. Now they were whole, not perfect, but whole. Kia reached across the table and laced her fingers with his. "Do you ever look back?" she asked. Donovan leaned back, watching her closely. "All the time." "And?" "I thank God every single day that you didn't run." She chuckled. "I almost did. Twice." "I know," he said, "but you stayed." "I stayed," she repeated. "And look what I got." She glanced toward the baby monitor beside her, Zion laughing in the background of a voice message he sent that morning, and the man across from her, no longer a brooding billionaire, but a father, a husband, a protector. You turned out to be worth the risk, Mr. Hayes. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. She blinked. Another ring? I already said yes. He smiled. This one isn't a proposal. It's a thank you. Inside the box was a gold pendant, delicate and simple, engraved with the word home. Her breath caught. I don't know where I'd be without you, Kia, he said. You brought me back to life, to love. You made this house, this family, a home. Tears filled her eyes as he fastened the necklace around her neck. She touched it softly, overwhelmed. I didn't do it alone. No, he agreed, but you showed me how. Later that evening, they sat around the living room, Zion doing homework on the floor, Donovan Jr. asleep in Kia's arms, soft jazz playing in the background. Kia scrolled through her phone, seeing a message from Brielle. You still planning that scholarship fund for Maid training programs? She replied instantly. Yes. Finalizing the board next week. We'll start with 5 women from low-income backgrounds, fully paid housekeeping certification plus mentorship. You're a real one, Kia. She smiled, locking the phone. That had become her new mission, not just to live in luxury, but to lift others the way she'd been lifted, to rewrite the narrative, because she hadn't been a gold digger. She'd been a seed, and now she was blooming. Later, when the house had gone quiet and the children were asleep, Kia stepped onto the balcony and stared out at the moonlight shimmering across the sea. Donovan joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. He stood behind her, arms firm around her waist. This is peace, he whispered. She leaned into him. It is. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then she asked softly, Do you ever miss the old days? He shook his head. Number I was a king in a castle made of glass. Now I'm a man in a home built of love. Kia turned to face him, heart full, and in that moment, barefoot, wrapped in his arms, her children safe inside, she understood something deeper than fairy tales. The happily ever after wasn't the wedding. It was the work after the vows. It was forgiveness, growth, holding each other through storms. And this was everything. She lifted her face to his. I'd choose you again, she whispered. Donovan kissed her slowly, reverently. And I'd find you sooner. At the opening of the Evans Foundation for Women in Service Professions, Kia stood at the podium with a baby on her hip and a diamond glinting on her hand. Behind her, a banner read, From housemaid to heiress, changing lives, one story at a time. The crowd rose to its feet in thunderous applause, but all Kia could see in the front row was Donovan holding Zion's hand and smiling at her like she was still the girl who walked into his mansion with nothing and gave him everything. This is the end of the story. If you're interested in Season 2 of the story, comment we really want Season 2.